Hi, welcome to the PDA Society's Q&As about PDA during the coronavirus outbreak. Today we're joined by our clinical advisor, consultant clinical psychologist, Dr. Judy Eaton, and our inquiry line lead and trustee, Paula Webb. Thank you for joining us, Judy.
Hello, good afternoon.
And thank you to you too, Paula.
Hello, welcome everybody.
Our question for today relates to siblings during the coronavirus lockdown.
A parent contacted us to say, I have two children, a 14-year-old son with Asperger's and an 11-year-old daughter with a PDA profile of autism. My son finds it hard to deal with his sister because she needs to be in control all the time. He is more laid back and flexible, but reaches his limit regularly because she can't do something for him if she doesn't want to. She then doesn't understand why he won't do something for her in return. They bicker a lot, and neither is willing to back down. We're self-isolating for 12 weeks because I have severe asthma. How can I help them both to work together instead of at odds?
Paula, can we put this to you in the first instance, please?
Yes, certainly. I think what I'd really like to do, if it's okay, Vicky, is probably just say a couple of things to all the parents and carers listening today. We may not have expected, this coronavirus. We may not have expected to be at home with our children for many weeks. Some parents are working from home, and we certainly didn't expect to probably be our child's teacher and having to go through lots of work and assignments. Daily life really has changed for many of our families, and it probably has become a little bit more difficult, in fact, very difficult for some. Many of our parents and children will actually be quite anxious. And that will obviously be due to the coronavirus and all the changes that it's brought about upon us. So one thing I'd really like to say to everybody is, please don't set yourselves too many tasks. Don't get too stressed. Don't think about clearing out the garage or clearing out the cupboards. Concentrate on your children and on your family relationships, because that's what's important right now, that we care for one another and we care for our family and neighbours through the telephone, etc. Think about them from an emotional point of view. If they need you, want to talk to you about what's happening in our world, make time for that. Try to be there for them and concentrate on them. We need to make sure that when this isolation is over and the virus has run its course, and we're all thinking about going back to work and school, etc., that we're actually going to be emotionally and mentally well enough to do those things. And we can only do that if we think about, our children now and keeping them emotionally well. Judy, would you actually have anything to add to that about what I've sort of opened up with?
Well, I think the first thing that struck me when I first read the question was that, in some ways, this isn't something that is just exclusive to families with PDA and autism. It could probably, the same question could probably have come from quite a large percentage of the whole population this last week or something, I imagine. So, in some ways, it's about realising that the kind of behaviour that they may be displaying is not necessarily just about their autism or PDA. It may be about them just being children. And, as well as having, autism or PDA, they are also children. And a lot of children who have been bickering, arguing, it's not their normal way to be sort of cooped up for days on end like they have been this last week or so. They will be picking up on the anxiety of their parents as well, and parents are obviously anxious as much as the children. And it's about realising that, in all of us, when we've got no control over our environment, we'll tend to control the things we can. And for a lot of the children with PDA, that will be the people around rather than anything else. So again, it's a little bit like Paula was saying, it's a case of really looking at, what is this behaviour trying to tell you? It's probably trying to tell you that they're anxious, they're probably bored, they're scared. they're out of routine. So, you know, in a lot of ways, this kind of bickering is fairly normal, I suppose. I mean, providing it doesn't get out of hand and they don't start lobbing things at each other or breaking them. But, you know, as a level, they're going to learn negotiation skills. They're going to learn to be with each other. And they have to do that. So they've got to find a new normal, as we all have at the moment.
Okay.
So that was kind of, yeah. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's sort of, that's actually developed onto what I actually said, yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. You know, all siblings are going to be acting this way. Maybe then I can sort of go on to, well, what can we do, you know, between siblings? What things can we look at doing to make things better between them? So I sort of picked up on, obviously, these two children in this family actually are both on the autistic spectrum. So they will probably both have social interaction and communication difficulties to some degree. They're also siblings, a boy and a girl, opposite sex, and they're also well on their way to adolescence. That's not an easy mix for any parent to deal with. So for the next few years, that mum might need to sort of really hone in on her children and developing their skills. But for this moment in time when they're in social isolation, what can she do? Well, the first thing I would say is, do they have any shared interests? Is there anything that they can do together for a short length of time? Maybe something like play a game of cards, kick the football around in the garden, but only for a short length of time, trying to make it end on a positive note. And that will develop the relationship between the two of them. Something else they could do is have plenty of downtime, time on their own, maybe in their own bedrooms or in separate rooms, because obviously they will have emotional regulation difficulties and sensory difficulties that they both need to regulate. The next thing would be, rather than the children doing things for each other, which could be very problematic, why not get them to do very small things for the parent? Maybe one of them makes mum a cup of tea in the morning, one makes mum a cup of tea in the afternoon. It will give them a sense of self-achievement, self-worth. There could be lots of other things. And I have made more suggestions in my written details, which the parents can access. Some parents will find that they're going to have to spend individual time with their children. So she might need to spend some time, it might only be 30 minutes, with her son, getting him started on his schoolwork or giving him some helpful tips. And then maybe in the afternoon or later in the morning, she might need to spend some one-on-one time with her daughter. It might be in a craft activity or some baking. But I think for many parents, the next thing is probably the one thing they're probably definitely going to have to do for some of the day. And that would be actually being with the two children and helping them to play together. There's nothing more, how can I put it? Oh, what's the word? I've lost the word, Vicky. It's lovely to see when siblings can actually play together, but sometimes they have to have a referee. And that's usually the only time we can see them play successfully together. So if mum really wants, or any parent really wants their children, their siblings, to have a really positive interaction together, they may need to play with them. So that might mean playing a board game for all 3, 4, 5 of them. It might mean playing in the garden. It might mean taking a bike ride together. And then at least mum will see some of the positives of having 2 beautiful children. Judy, do you have any more suggestions that you might give to the parents?
Well, no, I think you've done a fabulous job of summing it up. No,
Okay, Then I suppose what I'd like to say is, from my own experience, I have a son with Asperger's, and his 3-year-old, sorry,
3 years difference.
yeah, there's 3 years difference between them, and his younger brother has PDA, and I have to say that both of them had many lagging skills. In other words, that's skills that they had many difficulties with, and you can see my sheet for more details. But it meant that I had to be in the same room as both of my boys at the same time, trying to play with them both. It didn't always work. It depended on what we were trying to do. But maybe later in the day, I'd spend time with just one of them, and that was more of a positive time. So I suppose I'd sum up by saying, you need to find what works for you and your children. And a combination of the things maybe that I've mentioned may work for each family.
Thanks ever so much, Paula. I'd just add from my perspective as well, that taking some pressure and hands off for everybody, as I think you started with, including things like slightly controversially relaxing screen time at this time, perhaps relaxing the need that everybody eats dinner together at the table. It's not letting go of standards and it won't run away with you, but just to take a bit of pressure off at this time. Certainly from my personal perspective, that works well. I also have one child with Asperger's and one with a PDA profile, so I think several of us are in that boat. Do you go along with that, Judy, or do you think we're making a rod for our own backs?
No, I think that the phrase "pick your battles" has never been more apt, actually. And like you say, you know, stick to your non-negotiables, but allow them to be a little bit, and possibly, you know, not to stress too much about everything being organised and planned. Let them have that kind of a bit of flexibility, because they get so little of that when they have to go to school. So, you know, it's about just working with them, I suppose.
Yeah, and I do really think that it is also making time, you know, for them to be able to talk to you and ask questions about what's happening in their world.
Yeah, and realising that sometimes they might not be that able to verbalise what's worrying them or what's bothering. And that, like I said at the beginning, behaviour is a form of communication, and maybe the bickering and the arguing is about anxiety about something. And like you say, Paula, if they can sit down with you or the mum and talk things through and you know, have a bit of time when they have that opportunity, it might decrease some of the behaviours possibly.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both very much. Hopefully those tips will be really useful. There's also a great page on our website about siblings, which has got lots of tips as well, in addition to the written bits of, that we're going to add to this Q&A. So please join us next time for the next in our series of Q&As about PDA during the coronavirus outbreak. And do get in touch with us at comms2@pdasociety.org.uk if you have a question that you'd like to ask. Thanks.